My name is Onyango Otieno. I'm also known as Rick's Poet. I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I'm a mental health advocate, and I am an Afro-masculinity consultant. And I also like to call myself a gender activist. I'm the firstborn in my home, 3 kids. My parents are luckily alive. And growing up as a firstborn in my home had a lot of things because my parents fought a lot. And I had to grow up quicker than I had anticipated. And that was not the easiest of things to do because I had siblings to shield from a lot of the emotional turmoil that was going on at home. I had a mother who was trying to figure out herself in a tumultuous marriage. And I had a father who I had to work so hard to love, and myself. So that family setup was incredibly difficult for me to thrive in. But I would like to think that I have done very well to overcome a lot of that trauma from the domestic violence, from the emotional violence that I grew up with. And I'm a happy child right now. I started going to school at Nankopir Nursery School in Kitengela. It was a Catholic church setup. After which I joined at the River Prisons Primary School in Kitengela for my class 1 and partially class 2. My family moved to Rongai in 1996-97 thereabout, which I joined St. Mary's Rongai for what I can remember, class 2 and 3. My dad was moving around a lot. Then I moved to Masai Boys after that for my class 3 and partially class 4. And then we moved from Rongai to Huruma Estate. Then I joined Mountain View School on Thika Road for my class 4 and partially class 5. And then after Mountain View, I went to another St. Mary's in Donholm for my class 5 and partially class 6. Then after St. Mary's Donholm, I joined McKinney School. And my father told me, these people are too clever, go a class behind. So I rejoined class 5. This is 1999. I finished my KCPE at McKinney School. The 3 years were very smooth. And then after McKinney School, I was taken to St. Joseph Rapogi, which is in Nyanza, Migori. Is that Migori County, I think? Which I did my Form 1 and quarter of my Form 2. I was expelled from school from a very long story. You'll have to pay me to say that. Then I stayed home for much of 2004, which was a very crazy time for me. I rejoined school in 3rd term of Form 2. So the whole of Form 2, I never went to school for 2nd term. Then 3rd term, I joined AIC at the River, a secondary school, which was just a joke of a school because we were just there and just hanging out with girls and copying exams in cards and stuff. Incredible time of my life as well. Then I joined Pumwani Secondary School. I went back to halfway from Form 2, 2nd term, halfway. Then this is 2005. Then I finished by Form 4 at Pumwani Boys High School. After which I joined my A-levels in Uganda for it was Bugema Adventist Secondary School. So there I did Form 5 and 6. Then I finished in 2009, came back to Kenya, stayed home for 2010, the whole of it. Joined Daystar University in 2011, where I stayed for about a year before dropping out because of a lot of the family instabilities we had. That is the much school I have done. Now, when I was 15 years old, I fell into depression but at the time I did not recognize it as depression. All I remember is I was taken very far away from home. Already in my home setting, I felt very neglected. I felt like I was an abandoned child. So my father did not want me to go to the school which the government had called me to. I was called to Highway Secondary School. He didn't like that it was a day school. He didn't like that I had to be commuting to and fro. Being high school, he believed it had to be a boarding school. So they organized a way. Rapogi is my mom's home. So they organized a way to get me around St. Joseph, and I had good marks. I got a chance there. I didn't like the school, mostly because there was a lot of violence in school. The way prefects had so much power, the teachers would just do just about anything to you, and there was nowhere to report. There was nothing you could do about it. Coming from an already violent home, I was starting to get tired with these patterns. But more so, it was the child within me that had been wounded and felt very neglected and abandoned, and there was nobody to talk to about the things I was going through. So I remember there was like a twitch in my brain, that made me just withdraw from class. I stopped going to class at some point there. I stopped bathing. There was a streak. In fact, I had like 9 days without bathing, and I used to play a lot of football. So from the field, towel on my body, petroleum jelly, supper, class, perfume, get on with it. Nobody could recognize that I was behaving differently. It was a very lonely struggle. Then I also started stealing clothes from my friends because I was lazy. I didn't want to wash. I didn't want to do laundry. I would steal everything: socks, shirts. You were wearing shorts for Form 1s and 2s. My box wasn't lockable, so anybody could come in and out. And every time I wore a shirt that I had stolen, I'd just stock it up in my box. Go steal another one, stock it up in my box. I used to collect keys in school because boys were very careless, and it was just for fun. So one day I got this brilliant idea to test these keys on people's padlocks. And so I remember one day after breakfast, I locked myself up in the dorm. When everybody went to class, I chucked out my keys and started testing. And I discovered a lot of these tricycles padlocks were actually fake, because you could open them with any key sometimes without it having to be a master key. So I get inside, I find you've put for me some 200 shillings there, I grab. Some 500 shillings, I grab. Some sugar, I grab. Some writing pad, I grab. Milk powder, I grab. And I did that for 2 days, but it was like after I had withdrawn from a normal life of a student in the facility, in the school. So I was definitely found out and expelled. But in between that, it was the struggle to exist inside my brain, but I did not know what was going on. I just felt very off. I felt I wanted to be alone all the time. I didn't know how to put into words what I was feeling. 15 years later, I am diagnosed with depression. I am 28 years old and feeling suicidal. 2 years after I have lost a friend of mine called Cloud Boss. He had hanged himself, and a few months before this, I had lost another very young artist called Charles C. Luke, I think that was his name. And very many young people like me, boys, were dying. The organization I was running was having a tough time that time. I didn't have a job. I had a house. I needed to pay rent. It was crazy. So being diagnosed with depression, I remember one day coming back home and taking a 2-hour long shower, thinking to myself, do I take myself out? Do I look for another day to survive? How do I navigate this? So as always, for me, writing was the way out. So I remember leaving my bathroom with the water running and struggling to get to my laptop just to open it with my wet hands and typing on my Facebook that the story I am having today is I am depressed and I'm suicidal, and people like me also struggle. Now, being a writer, having this, formidable following online, probably likable in other terms, it's sometimes very difficult for people to humanize you. They look at you as, they put you on a pedestal like your life is perfect, you always, you look good, it seems like everything is going on well for you. But behind the scenes, there are so many other things we don't say, so many other things we don't talk. So I figured to myself, if I don't figure out what's bringing this thing in my mind, these thoughts that I'm having, these struggles, these mental pains, if I don't figure them out, they may take me out next time they come back. So this is the time I am getting curious about what are these suicide. I remember really just getting on Google to search suicidal thoughts because there was nothing else I was looking for. Then these terms about mental health now came, and I was like, there's so much here to read. Depression, what is this, and I started learning and reading, and I shared more of my stories. But most times when I would look for information, it was only white people's information there. There were only white people's stories. And I was like, where are black people's stories about these things? Where are African stories about mental health? So I couldn't find people to relate with on, indigenous level. And I said, maybe this is what I want to change. I want to tell African stories about mental health. I want to start with my story. So I kept writing about my recovery process. I went to therapy. I would write even on the days I was feeling low. And one of the difficult things about that time was sometimes I couldn't move. So my friends would come to my house, they would wash my house, they would open up the curtains, they would cook for me, they would spend time with me. And sometimes the only thing I would do the whole day was spread the bed. And that was all. So starting to write about these stories, so many people got back to me. They were saying, I'm also going through this. Oh my God, you're telling my story. This is me right now. And so many others came to my inbox saying, I can't write on the public post, I can't comment publicly, but I am struggling with A, B, C, D. And I kept wondering, how comes so many of us are struggling with these things, but nobody's talking about them? Why the fear, So I start understanding the complexity around the stigma associated with mental illness. And I say, okay, I'm gonna write about it just because people fear, because I like that. I like facing the fears. This is what my writing journey has been about. I want to face the fear the society is feeling regarding facing these complex issues. And that's the time it became very serious for me. But even within that, I was also humanizing my own experience and healing through my own words and helping other people to individualize their own experiences. And it has been amazing. So for me, why mental health is important, why talking about mental wellness is important, is because I define the mind as your second soul. When your second soul is sick, everything is out. I felt very cheated that at 28 years of my life, nobody in my life had ever taught me the importance of taking care of my mind. I went to school, I learned the alphabet, I learned algebra, I learned about vectors, I learned geography and about lakes and about God, but nobody told me anything about my mind. A lot of things. Human beings are very complex things. We are very complex. One thing, it could be, let's say, the bomb blast that happened here in 1998. This explosion happened. People were maimed, some died, some were left with disabilities forever, and without proper therapy, proper medication, proper structures for healing processes, even your mind remains maimed, and because we can't see it, we won't know that you're struggling with internal pain, that these images keep coming to you, and that's what we call trauma, right? Trauma actually comes from the Greek word wound. So it's like the inner wound that you can't feel it, you can't touch it, but it's there, It could be from witnessing violence around you, and this is different kinds of violence. For most of us, it is structural violence that keep our minds sick. What structural violence is basically living in environments that make it very difficult for you to move securely, make it very difficult for you to have food security, make it very difficult for you to have a quality education. That is structural violence. And so you find your mind gets sick if you do not have exposure to a healthy life, and a healthy life are those things I'm just from mentioning. So it's a lot of things. When it comes to artists, so many of us started writing from the point of pain, or even creating, or even any kind of creativity. Many of us started from a point of pain. We were going through something, we had to look for a way to express it, and then the art came. We were attracted to people who created what seemed like was expressing what we were feeling, and that's what we emulated and created from that. And so you find, even when you look back in time, the greatest artists, many of the greatest artists that ever lived, they had a lot of mental turmoils, most of which were not even talked about because of the shame and the stigma that came with these issues. But yes, so many artists go through or have gone through mental turmoils, mental difficulties. They may not necessarily be mental illnesses, because again the spectrum is very large. But indeed, those are like many artists' realities. What I do is, I realized that the public healthcare system in Kenya and for large of Africa, and this is even a global issue, concerning mental health, is highly neglected. So we only have very, very few mental hospitals here, but most times what people need is community support systems. That's what most people need. Most people don't need medication to be treated on their mental struggles. They need people to humanize their experiences. They need stories. They need to tell stories about what has happened to them. So what I did is I opened an online mental health support group, and I just put it up online that I'm opening up this space. If you're interested, just join in. And what we are going to be doing there is to talk about these issues, whether you are living with a mental situation, or you're a caregiver, because that is another situation, or you're just curious to learn about mental health. And 200 people got back to me saying, I want to join. So I make them create the community in their own terms. How do we want to survive or live in this space? What do we want to be talking about in this space? Who is going to be leading conversation, or at this time, at that time? I don't lead anything. I just offer the possible tools out of my own exposure that's gonna help 1 to 3 people. And aside from that, I also opened a safe space that is a support group for men who've been sexually abused and raped as well, which is another special sensitive space and conversation that I'm very passionate about. So that's what I do. In essence, I also just generally write about emotions, because especially for a man, a black man, a black African man, the notion that I am supposed to grow up to be a very tough, macho, stoic human being, who is supposed to provide and be the priest of the house and be the head of the house, and all these responsibilities heaped upon me the moment I was born, and people discovered I have opinions. I wanted to demystify a lot of those things, because they are the same reasons that lead to a lot of the violence that we are witnessing around our communities. So I write about emotions, I write about men's emotions, I write about men's perspectives and perceptions and men's politics. I write about men's pain, because for the longest time we have only been associating emotions with women. And emotions have also been gendered in such a way that they are taken as weak. If you're emotional, then you're a weak person. And yet all of us are full of emotions. Even animals have emotions. The fact that you're a human being, you're living, it means you're made up of emotions.